Hello, this is Spilo from the past. I am unable to be streaming on this Tuesday, Thursday. I will be out of town, busy with some stuff that I had scheduled several weeks ago, which is kind of awkward timing, but it is what it is. And so I'm going to be recording a CarQ-esque ahead of time, preparing something, and then releasing it the day of, once obviously the patch notes are actually public. I've not really done anything like this before. I actually purposely avoid any early access to patch notes just so that I can react live on stream with you guys. I don't have any prepared interactions. So today is going to be a little bit different. I am going to have Microsoft Paint pulled up here just to kind of dictate and kind of transcribe a little bit of what I'm reacting to as I do so. We do know this is going to be a 6v6 patch notes, I believe, based off of what the director's take said. So we're just going to kind of go right into it here, and we're going to scroll through. This will be a little bit more scuffed than what I'm used to, of course, but obviously any reaction is better than none. So let's get the paint pulled up here, and I guess we'll go through here. We'll focus mostly, as you guys know, on the patch notes changes with 5v5 and 6v6, not as much stadium. And I don't know if I might be missing some things in these. So if I miss anything major, I apologize. I don't know if this is like the fully formatted version that I have access to. Extended booster perk from Diva. Booster now deals 100% additional damage. This is a big deal. This definitely means that this perk is going to be, I picked pink and it just goes this, it can be a lot better. Is this going to be better than the Baby Diva one? I'm not so sure. But actually, man, that's a lot more damage. How much damage does that do? I actually can't pull it up right now. Is it 30, 40? Something like that? That's a big deal. Like, that's a big deal. Keep an eye on this one. This could be not only a pretty significant buff to the character, but a pretty significant buff to just the diving, like, more actively engaged aspect of this character. It's definitely a weaker perk. I actually like the concept of the perk, but having a longer booster and more damage on boosters, this is freaking huge. Like, her burst damage is going to go through the roof. Hazard. Spike Guard no longer prevents critical damage. Okay, so he can basically be headshot through Spike Guard, which is interesting. I'm not against that. It just depends on how easy that hitbox is. It should still be relatively challenging. Violent Leap cooldown reduced from 6 to 5.5 seconds. Cool. That seems like a compensation nerf. Basically, like, he's a little bit less tanky, but he can move around a little bit more, which I think is probably a pretty healthy direction. With House's block now less survivable against burst damage, this change increases his mobility, allowing him to reposition gauge more fresh. This is going to be a pretty big nerf depending on how easy it is to shoot him in the head, but I do like the direction of this change. Hazard's kind of a middling tank right now in terms of win rate, if I remember correctly. But yeah, this seems really fine. I guess I should probably take a second here and see if there's any like changes that I'm expecting from like win rates. Like I said, I really haven't had time here to really prep this out. So I apologize for how scuffed this is, but you guys know what we're here for. It's not always the highest production value. So if we like look here, let's just look at tank right now because that's what we're talking about. I mean, there's a couple of things that are definitely overperforming. Reinhardt, we've talked about a mixed bag here. I'm not going to go over all of my issues with these tanks necessarily as a whole, but I actually think that like right now tank meta is like pretty decent. It's really not too shabby right now. Like, Roadhog's bad, Orissa's bad, Ramontra's bad, but none of them are, like, completely unplayable, with the exception of, I guess, Roadhog. Orissa's still been kind of unplayable-ish. I think Zarya is overtuned, but she's more overtuned in higher ranks due to a certain perk. Ryan needs more tweaks to his shield, but it's, like, kind of a mixed bag. I don't think Hazard needs any major buffs or nerfs. I think he's pretty balanced. But, obviously, like, if they're going to nerf his survivability and buff his mobility, I'm certainly not going to complain. Wrecking Ball, I think, definitely needs some nerfs. I think since his grapple change, his skill floor is dramatically lowered. Not in a bad, I don't think it's bad change. I think it's good changes, but just keep in mind. I think tank meta is like okay right now. So I would be shocked if we saw anything super major, but yeah, so far these are okay. Orisa, Fortify and Terror Surge now only prevent headshot critical damage and not forced crits. So that means Malga stuff and Ryan's Earth Shatter. Oh, whoa. Whoa, that's huge. That's a huge nerf in that matchup. So Ryan's matchup versus Orisa was really challenging, but you can just straight up get crit damage from Shatter, which is not that big of a deal because it's still going to be reduced by Fortify's damage reduction, but it's a tiny little buff in that interaction, I guess. So if you can Shatter a Fortified Orisa, you'll still do a decent chunk of damage. What is that, like 200 something damage on a crit or Again, the numbers I don't have pulled up right now. I'm sorry, this is super unprofessional, but yeah, this is that's a big nerf, but it's a way more impactful on the Malga matchup. So you can just straight up crit an Orisa, which is still going to have reduced damage, I believe, but crucially, it's going to allow Malga to sustain, because Malga is reliant off of the crits for sustain. So Fortified Orisa during her ult and not, you can actually sustain yourself during that. That matchup's going to be way easier. Which they might need to do some tweaks off of that, but that makes that matchup like less of a hard counter, which I think is a good thing. Like that means that then we have more space to like buff Orisa in other ways, which I know that's going to cause some tears in the comments, but because, I mean, Orisa's going to be worse right now, but like the matchup versus Malga, Ryan's not going to be so much auto win anymore. Certainly versus the Malga, but okay. Ramattra base health is increased 25. Relentless form perk no longer has half the effectiveness in Annihilation. So basically just, it's still going to be the bad perk, but it's more effective Annihilation. Yeah, I don't think this is one going to be too impactful. I mean, more health is, you know, we've had 50 more health, I believe, in the last couple of months. So I think his win rate will go up a tiny bit. His 25 health, even for a tank, is, you know, it's 25 health, I guess. So, but yeah, nothing super major there. I mean, his perk is less trash, but nothing super major. Wrecking Ball, base armor reduced 50, not a huge surprise. Especially considering his perk is actually just straight a survivability buff. Like the shield perk now is just a net survivability buff. I still don't think it's necessarily the must pick perk all the time, but the other one is still really good. But yeah, seems totally fine. It's a slap on the wrist, but it will sting a little bit and it's fine. It's also armor, crucially, so not a problem. Energy converter perk, energy gained reduced from 3 to 2. Awesome change. Good stuff. Still probably the must pick perk, but this also is something that's going to nerf her slightly more in higher ranks than lower ranks, which is definitely, I think, the change that you want for her. She's just not a super healthy tank to have be hard meta, because she has a higher skill floor than a lot of the other Brawl tanks, but I just don't think that there is a Brawl tank that is really healthy to have meta all the time in their current iteration right now. Zarya is definitely not the worst tank to be meta by the long shot, so, but I do think that how well she's been doing at higher ranks has been correlated with this perk specifically, and this perk is still fine. It's still going to be the better perk most of the time, but it's a lot more manageable. 3 to 2 is percentage-wise, it's a sizable decrease. Now, it still pauses your energy decay, which is a large portion of the reason why it's so good. So this isn't a huge nerf, but yeah. Okay. Ashe. I'm curious to see what they do to Ashe. Ashe is doing very well right now, so let's see. The Viper secondary fall-off range, so that's her scope, rescale from 30 to 50 to 40 to 60. Ooh. Don't know how I feel about that. I don't think Ashe's fall-off was a huge problem. I've always liked Ashe being like at the range that she's at, like the medium to long, and not committed to the long. I think her problem is that her inability to reposition, which we wanted to maintain as a weakness of her, but I don't think moving her more into sniper range is exactly what I'd want. I think I'd leave her fall off as is and tweak around with her coach gun cooldown, or coach gun cooldowns reduced if you don't hit a target, stuff like that. I don't think Ashe should be competing with Hanzo Widow at longer ranges, but I do think that she should be more flexible with what she does. So put a cork in that one, keep an eye on that one, but I'm not so sure. Hinder duration increased. Ooh. I don't like that. I mean, Cassidy sucks right now. Like, let's be perfectly honest. Cassidy is no bueno right now, for sure. And a lot of people are like, what? I mean, before you say anything, I'm just going to confront you with the numbers, okay? And I don't want to hear, oh, stats don't matter. Stats absolutely matter in terms of win rates. They need to be interpreted within the context of what they're doing. But under almost no context is this good, okay? Especially with that high of a pick rate, right? So that means that there's a higher chance that this is going to be very accurate. This is the case. Don't even say, oh, well, lower ranks don't know how to play Cassidy, okay? Let me demonstrate, okay? Okay? It's not good. That being said, I don't know if this is the play, my friends. Hinder, I think the problem with Cassidy is he still doesn't have a range identity. Like, we don't know what range Cassidy is supposed to be most effective at. And I think that them taking away his 25 HP and then keeping fall off where he is probably not the direction I would have gone. I think this hinder duration increase is just going to make it a lot more frustrating getting hindered, which is already a frustrating experience. It's an inconsistent experience. But I don't know. I don't like this. And this also indirectly makes that minor perk that was basically 100% pick rate, aka the double flashbang, the bang bang. It already is 100% pick rate, and now there really is 100% pick rate because there's no reason to pick the high noon heal perk. So this seems like a very, very not super well thought out Band-Aid fix. I don't know that there is another Band-Aid fix. Maybe they didn't want to flip-flop in his HP again because they might get criticism for that. But honestly, I think they just need to give him back his 25 HP and then nerf his fall-off ranger. Or maybe here's a Band-Aid fix. They need to make his fall-off gradient. I believe the way his fall-off works can be like overly harsh at very, very, very long ranges, but it kicks in too fast or not fast enough. I don't know if that makes sense, but like there's like a gradient here of like how Cassidy's fall-off works, like maximum effective efficacy, and then this. And then, okay, this starts to kind of kick in here, and then it's like really bad from here on out, right? But they could look at like the way that this gradient works out and like identify like what gradient of fall off works best and kind of tweak around with that. That would probably be your best Band-Aid fix, but I'm kind of disappointed, but that's okay. It's certainly not going to make him strong. It's just going to make him more annoying. Echo, movement acceleration in air increased by 100% when changing directions while flight is active. Wow, that's a big dive buff. So basically, movement acceleration air increased by 100% when changing directions while flight is active. So while your shift is active, so while you're using your flight, aka you're flying around here. I don't know why I'm saying aka as if that wasn't clear. So Echo, I believe this means when you're using your flight, so your shift cooldown on PC, you're going to be able to reposition and move around, aka more like, I keep saying aka, more like Juno. So this old Juno, like more control, I believe, but I'm not 100% certain. Which I actually kind of like because I think flight as a mobility cooldown was pretty much strictly related to the burst on using flight. So I keep saying AKA. When you use your flight, there's like this burst of momentum. And that was really how you used it to disengage. But then it really became like you move so slowly after that initial burst that it was really unreliable. And it's why she's always felt more like a flyer than she's felt like a flanker. This feels maybe like she actually will have a little bit more flight control, a little bit more speed after that initial burst. Yeah, and I think that's what the dev comments here back up. So we'll wait and see. I'm okay with that because I think that's like the effective. It's effectively giving her 25 more HP in a roundabout way of like, okay, well if she's gonna have 225, we have to actually have a mobile character. And I've been pretty vocal recently about some of my criticisms of her being more poke focused. They've tightened her spread, they've given her more stickies and so on. I like her being more of the hybrid. I don't want another poke DPS, right? Like I think like we're good with that, right? So this seems more to be like, okay, well she's gonna have 225, then she needs to move more like a Genji, more like a Tracer, more like a Sombra or something along those lines, which makes total sense to me. Primary fire damage per second increased. I've always hated Mei's primary fire. This damage increases ensures Mei's primary fire remains a consistent choice in close range duels, but I understand. It was really quite bad, the freeze, but I'm not going to cry over that one. Sojourn, Sojourn, as we've seen, really bad. Disruptor shot damage per second increased. Projectile speed increased. I think that's okay. I like the projectile speed specifically because I think it makes it a lot more consistent to land on long range, which means you're rewarded for placing it accurately more. It's not just like a zoning tool. You can use it a lot more flexibly. Maximum travel duration reduced from 1 to 0.57 seconds, 0.75 seconds, which means you're not gonna be able to put it like across the map because it's moving faster. It's gonna travel distance a lot further. So it's increasing its speed by 33.3%, but it's reducing its duration by 25%, I believe, which then means if I'm doing my math correctly, I believe it's actually gonna be able to travel slightly further than before, but not much further. So just more reliable. It's fine. Disruptor Shot's kind of a boring cooldown nowadays. It's just not a very interesting cooldown, but it is part of her utility and what makes her unique. And I don't think it's a bad cooldown design by any means. It's just different. So yeah, it's a buff for sure. Okay. Sombra, hidden upload perk. Stealth duration on successful hack increased from 2 to 3 seconds. That's fine. That makes that perk a little bit more viable. I still like Control Auto Escape more for uptime, but there's situations where you can use hidden upload for rotations, for hacking health packs and moving from point A to point B. You can use hacks more for utility. It doesn't really deal with Sombra's problem necessarily, but as a band-aid, it definitely makes that perk more competitive. Healthy hacker perk. So this is the one where you hack a health pack, you get the HP, and you move away. Time before overhealth degeneration increased from 6 to 10 seconds. That's a huge buff. And I actually don't mind the way that they buffed that as well, because I think the danger with Healthy Hacker before is that it was a cool way to use hack health packs, but the duration of the overhealth was so short that you it was a little scary to move away from the health back, which is not what you want with Sombra. You want to be able to hack the health back, walk through it, and still be able to take action in the fight elsewhere. And I think that this helps that in a gameplay loop standpoint, to where you still have a reason to do something with your hacked health back, but you don't have a reason. Don't just sit on it. Overhealth granted increased from 50 to 75. I actually don't think they should have done that. Overhealth degeneration increased from 10 to 25. So basically it degenerates faster and is more overhealth from the hack health back. I don't like that. I think that's the opposite of what you should do. You should make it so that you're the overhealth is very forgiving, but you're not given like a massive buff, because 75 health is crazy. Packs cannot be picked up at full health to reset the generation timer. Does this not just become like a must pick perk like immediately now? I don't think the hack virus perk was ever super good, but it was like a decent option. But now this is a lot of buffs at the same time. I think the time before overhealth degeneration would be the one that I would have left at and just leave as is. Leave the degeneration rate as it is. Don't give it more health. And the picked up at full health is fine, I think. Yeah, I don't know. That seems like a lot. We'll have to wait and see. That's a massive buff to Sombra right now. Like it is a late buff to Sombra, so you're not going to see it reflected in win rates skyrocketing necessarily, but that is a massive buff. 300 health Sombra with a lot more consistency. Big deal. Keep an eye on that one. That is probably one of the largest buffs that we've seen, along with both Echo Flight and the Diva buff, I think. Those are the three things that I want to keep an eye on here. Doesn't mean those characters can be meta-defining, just that those characters are probably going to see some movement, in the meta. Repair pack cooldown reduced from 5.5 to 5 seconds. That's a big deal. Developers comments, Brigitte's healing up because feels limited. Keep an eye on that one. That's a big deal as well. Not a bad thing. I don't think Brig is super good right now, and I think Brig metas are okay in comparison to some other supports. Juno glide boost movement acceleration and arrows increased by 50% when changing directions while glide boost. So it's a partial reversion to Juno's spam strafing. It's good. I think partial reversion is a good spot for it to be in. Kirikou cost, ultimate cost increased. Sure. It's not a big deal. Kirikou's, again, one of those characters that's overhated because of how her design is, but she's not particularly dominating. I keep forgetting to draw on here, but, Kiri! And then we're moving on. Lifeweaver. Model and hit volume size reduced by 8%. Okay, sure. That's something that we've actually been asking for a long time, and they actually freaking did it. We love that. Good job. I still want 275 HP for this guy, but all right. Healing Blossom Thorn Volley, automatic reload time for the inactive weapon reduced from 2.5 seconds to 2 seconds. Okay, perfect. Time between weapon swap reduced from 0.25 to 0.125. So half the weapon swap time. Lifeweaver's larger model makes them easier to hit. Lower health pool, this hitbox reduction. So the good news here, the bad news is that they're still not leaning into the beef, the hybrid of like having a support that can tank stuff, and absorb attention, and get their hands dirty. But the good news is that they've recognized if this is what we're going to make Lifeweaver, aka 250 HP, then we need to give him something more range focused, something more in line with a more range focused support. So they reduce his hitbox. They make the damage and healing output just feel a little bit smoother, and that's it. Yeah, so that's 100%. It's consistent. You can disagree with whether Lifeweaver belongs in that niche. I think we already have a lot of supports in that niche, but if that's their vision for the character, which I think is perfectly reasonable, then these are the changes that absolutely needed to happen. So nice. It's nice to actually see some good Weaver changes after the last few months. So overall, pretty good. I'd say a couple things missed the mark. I think the Cassie flashbang is and the Ashe one is not a big deal, but I don't think it's going to make Ashe stronger, but not necessarily in the way that's going to feel fun. Like I can just imagine an Ashe with a damage boost just, again, 10 meters further back, right? You want to be very careful about increasing characters' effective range, because it is why snipers are really controversial in games, period, because it feels like I'm not interacting with what's killing me. And I think Ashe is that perfect sweet spot, and I hope this gets reverted at some point in time. But for the most, and like things like Sombra, right? Like I like the changes. I'm just concerned about how is that too much? Same thing with the Diva thing, the Orisa thing. Like I like the changes there, but that is going to be a nerf to Orisa in the Amalgam matchup. But overall, this is a much better patch. There's a lot of interesting changes, which to me is the most sincere compliment that I can give, because it means that we're trying things. The hazard chain is a great change. Like, AKA we want hazard to feel more vulnerable during block, vulnerable to skill play, as in shooting him in the head. But you're also able to kind of engage more in the battlefield around. We're looking to nerf the right aspects of Zarya. We're looking to allow Echo to feel more like a dive character. We want Sombra to have more reasons to use a hacked health pack, but in a way that she can leave. We want Juno to have the strafing thing, but just pared down. We want Lifeweaver, if we're going to make him 250 and a little bit squishier, well, then we want him to make him more offensive, able to do things more without getting his head blown off. Yeah, this is good. It's not a bad patch so far. Let's check out 6v6. So I have not played a lot of 6v6. I have talked with a lot of people that have played 6v6, and also about a year ago before they brought in 6v6, I did play a lot of 6v6. So I have obviously, and I've coached 6v6 longer than I coached 5v5, and I think that's something that a lot of people forget. So I understand what the concerns were with the 6v6 initially, and I also have a pretty good idea of what 6v6 feels like, even if it hasn't been up to date. Now, the irony is that's not really a problem because they haven't really done anything to 6v6 for ages, so my opinion's still relevant. And my opinion was that the main difference between 6v6 and 5v5, spiritually, holistically, the soul of the game is more about team play. It's more about combos. It's more about coordination. It's more about composition, right? And so the criticisms of 6v6 is that it is a little bit volatile depending on the combos that you're running, the tank composition, the support composition. It's important to get those things right, more so in 6v6 than 5v5. And it's not, but solo tank, what if my tank picks the wrong solo tank? There's a lot more flexibility with how you can space around that as a DPS and support. But the criticisms of 6v6 is that if you get that composition wrong, you screw up. My problem with the way that they did 6v6 is that people want to play 6v6 because they want the fun tank combos. They want the fun support combos. They want the team play and the counterplay. And what they did is they were so scared about the sustain stuff of Overwatch 1, double shield, goats, whatever, is that they nerfed a lot of sustain, which was, fine, a little bit. But more importantly, they nerfed tank cooldowns. And so they didn't want they wanted windows of vulnerability, which I think is already there in 60. If you just plugged in 5v5 tanks as they are right now in terms of cooldowns, not HP, nerf the HP, plug them in, there is still vulnerability there. And crucially, there's enough frequency of engagement that you're not having these long periods of downtime. Tank cooldowns absolutely contributed to the sustain fest that was, at times, 6v6 in Overwatch 1, but that was more carried by support than it was by tank, I just think objectively, and I think this conversation has been had many times. And in addition to that, I don't think that there is that concern anymore. I think that after playing 6v6 both in workshop codes and 6v6 on the live game, even playtesting it a long time ago, I just never felt like there was the capability of having the same ceiling of sustain crap or the same floor where it was easy to just tank stack, Moira Lucio, Bat Brig, whatever you may have, double shield. I just don't think that those things were good anymore. And a lot of my 6v6 testing, what I found out were characters like D.Va were really strong. You would run dive comps were still ridiculously strong. Now, this is not with current live 6v6 because I think a lot of those things are weaker, but still D.Va strong. Dive's good, Brawl's good. You're still mad if you have a team guy that picks a Roadhog, but that applies to 5v5 too. And basically, TLDR is that I think there was an over concern about 66, and then I just don't feel like there was enough development or playtime put into that to see actually that those concerns I think were unfounded. And so the reason why I did the 66 video wasn't just to critique and think about the game mode, but also to warn the developers that, hey, if you do 66, you don't need to worry about sustain. We're fine. You throw it all. Let people do the combos that they want. It's why people want to play 66, right? And so I felt like those concerns were not listened to or heeded as well as they would have liked. And so we had a 66 game mode that felt a lot slower than it needed to be for a longer period of time. So I'm hoping, that's my hope for these changes, is that they actually just make tanks feel more like 5v5 in terms of the cooldown cycles, if not the health, because I just don't think that we need to worry about having OP tanks in 66. I just think it's much less of an issue. Just chunking 150, 200 health away is that's a lot right there, Okay, D.Va health reduced from 350 to 300. Defense matrix recharge rate reduced by 15%. She's squishier, which is probably fair. And the defense matrix reduce rate by 15%. I mean, D.Va, I don't know if it's like that. You guys will have to tell me in current 6v6, but from my understanding, D.Va has always been the de facto off-angle control off tank. She enables her tank really well. She enables her backline really well. She's just the jack of all trades, and she's consistently been the most important tank, I think, in 6v6 history, even more so than Orisa, because you think back to literally the inception of professional Overwatch back in like 2017-ish or so, all the way up until even competing at times with double shield here and there, depending on the meta. And that's just due to the strength of mobility and off-angle control. D.Va is the quintessential off-tank, even more so than Zarya, and so it's probably reasonable that she gets a slap on the wrist. Doomfist, I believe he's also quite OP in 66, just based off of the AoE value. Overhealth gained, reduced from 35 to 25. Power block amount of damage to gain and power punch increased. Again, just another target shooting him. Seems like pretty reasonable nerfs without slowing down his cycles of pressure and so on. Jungle Queen base health is slightly increased to 450. Adrenaline Rush, self-healing from wounds scaled up, so they're just buffing Queen a little bit. Seems very reasonable. Malga cooldown reduced from 17 to 15 seconds. Nice. I think there's this concern with Cardiac Overdrive for damage reduction, but Malga is very vulnerable to mitigation of tanks. We talked about it with the Orisa change with Fortify recently, but shields, matrix bubbles deny his lifesteal. And so the more tanks there are, the more likely they're going to be able to either CC or deny that lifesteal. And Cardiac Overdrive nowadays doesn't provide enough defensive or offensive utility to your team, so it's not broken. And so the cooldown cycle of 17 seconds, I think, was always pretty cringe. But now it makes even less sense to have a longer cooldown because it's just much weaker of a cooldown. So his cage fight is still probably really strong in 66, but I think this is a much better change, and this is kind of what I was looking for. I mean, 2 seconds is not a lot, but it is a lot. It's a big deal. Shield health increased of Reinhardt. I don't love that. I think there's a lot of things they could do with Rein in the 66 aim mode, but I don't love a bigger shield. That's kind of like what we don't want to do. I'm not really concerned about sustain, but to me, I'm want to look at the cooldowns, right? So, okay. Winston jump pack cooldown reduced from 6 to 5 seconds. That's what we needed. That's good. Base health of Wrecking Ball reduced. Adaptive shields over health reduced. That's totally fine. Okay, so these are relatively, I would say, relatively positive. Addressing the more commonly considered to be stronger tanks, and also a couple of relatively major cooldown reductions, specifically to Winston and Malga. Most importantly, I think Winston. So, yeah. Sure, it's a start. I need to update this here. 6v6, isn't that so much better? Professional content creator. Zenyatta's broken. Off angles are so much easier to mark and control. There's a lot of tanks. Transcendence has gone up. I think they're probably going to nerf Discord, maybe even reduce his damage. I honestly probably just nerf Discord. Now has a cooldown per target. I think that's it. I believe that's it. Okay, that might be all we got going, y'all. Yeah, and then we have some stadium stuff, which I won't talk about. Okay, yeah, I mean, it wasn't much. It's definitely not a ton of changes, but I hope that it is the sign of things to come, where there's like a little bit of thought and effort put into 66. I think more than anything else, 66 just needs consistent development time. It just needs consistent development time proportionate to the amount of players that play it. We know based off the recent director's take that, what was it, like 20% of players at least play one game of 6v6 during a session, which doesn't necessarily mean that 20% of playtime is in 6v6, but I mean, that's still a lot. Like that's 1 out of every 5 players doesn't even, I mean, 6v6 is like, it's not exactly front and center, and it's also not been the game mode for a long time. So there's even just like the logistical visibility optics of it is just not as high. And so the fact that it has that playtime is pretty solid. Like that's decent. We don't have information on Stadium, but I would guess that that's probably relatively competitive at Stadium, or at least within the ballpark of Stadium, which is getting a lot more resources. So I think that's good. I think these changes for 66 were kind of like whatever. Like, I know there's going to be a lot of people in the comments that are like, oh, this is nothing, this is nothing, this is nothing. For me, I will be a lot more critical of this if this is all we get for 66 for the next like 3 or 4 or 5 months, right? Then we're going to be critical. As a start, sure. Let's see where it goes from there, and then we can kind of reevaluate in hindsight. Because I think within context, this looks okay, but we just have to see where we go from there. 5v5 changes, I think totally fine. Certainly... I think better than the initial start of the season, and pretty decent for a mid-season patch. Like enough changes, enough things that thankfully are also just adjustments to how things are being played. Like we're seeing the Sombra Hacked Health Pack perk, which, to be honest with you guys, that might be something that might be interesting for part of the base kit. So let's see how that gameplay loop is. Is it obnoxious? Is it broken? Does it allow her to have more uptime? That's a good thing for Sombra because it means that we can downplay her lethality. Obviously, it's a major perk, so it's going to take a while to get. But things like the hazard block, there's a lot of little tweaks here. The Lifeweaver changes, which we can kind of wait and see. Even the Orisa changes, which are going to be nerfed to her, but maybe that's good. Maybe that we're sharp or dulling the hard counters of Orisa and Malga and so on. So wait and see. Nothing super major in terms of balance. I do think things like, that's a lie. I think the Sombra thing is interesting. Keep an eye on that one. But really crucially, I think keep an eye on the Echo one. Keep an eye on, what am I thinking of here? Keep an eye on the Diva one. That is a minor perk, which is really important as well. So, the Hazard one might be a little bit too harsh of a nerf. Half a second cooldown reduction on Brigitte's armor pack is not nothing, so keep an eye on that one too. There's actually a more significant adjustments this time around. Wrecking Ball, minor nerf as well, so we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, that's all I got. I will see you guys on Saturday, and that is all.